I used to laugh that off. I used to think friendship, real friendship, was immune to things like loans or cash favors. I was wrong. Painfully, heartbreakingly wrong. I met Mason in college. First day of freshman orientation, we were both lost, both late, both holding the exact same wrong map of campus. He cracked a joke about starting a support group for hopeless navigators, and I laughed way too hard. That's where it started. For years of inside jokes, terrible parties, road trips, and leaning on each other when everything else in life felt too loud. He was my best friend, my brother in everything but blood. We grew up, moved to different cities, but we never really drifted. Weekend calls, random memes, birthday visits. When my dad passed suddenly, Mason was the one who showed up at the funeral unannounced with my favorite junk food and no pressure to talk. Just present. Solid. That was Mason. Or so I thought. So when the call came one Thursday night and I picked up to hear his voice cracking like glass under pressure, I was already mentally getting my credit card out. Bro, he whispered, she's dying. Mom's got stage 4. It's everywhere. Liver, lungs, spine. I sat up straight in bed. Wait, what? What happened? They just found it. One minute she had this cough, and the next, he trailed off. And then I heard something I hadn't heard from him in years. Real guttural sobbing. Not the performative kind. Not the sniffles you fake when someone dies and you're trying to show you care. This was trembling, shaking grief. I'm flying out to see her. I maxed my cards getting the last minute ticket and paying some bills. I didn't know who else to ask, man. I just need enough to cover rent and keep the lights on while I'm gone. 3 grand. I swear I'll pay it back. You know I'm good for it. Without thinking, I said yes. I wired him $3,500 the next morning. It wasn't pocket change, but we'd known each other for over a decade. If the roles were reversed, I knew he'd do it for me. Besides, it was his mom. I remembered her, Judy. Loud laugh, big hugs, always made way too much food. The idea that she was withering away in some hospital bed, it tore me up. Over the next 2 weeks, Mason went quiet. Radio silence. No updates, no calls. I figured he was grieving. But I started getting uneasy when he didn't even reply to my texts, asking how she was doing. It wasn't like him. Then one morning I saw it. An Instagram story. It popped up between ads while I was half asleep, and for a second, my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. There was Mason sipping a bright red cocktail by a pool, shirt off, sunglasses on, with the caption, "Finally catching a breath." I froze. Catch a breath? In a hospital? With your dying mom? Maybe it was old. Maybe he posted it by accident. I tried to rationalize it, but deep down I knew something was off. I clicked through his profile, nothing too obvious, but then I found a tagged photo. A friend had posted a group shot at a rooftop bar just 2 nights ago. Mason was grinning ear to ear, holding a beer. The location tag? Miami. Miami. Not exactly a known cancer treatment destination. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, hoping, praying this was some kind of twisted mistake. But the worst came 2 days later when I cracked and called his mom's number. I expected voicemail. I got her cheerful voice. "Hey, sweetie." I was stunned. "Judy? Oh, hey. Wow, it's been ages." I didn't know what to say. How are you feeling?" "Me? Oh, great. Just got back from my pottery class. My arthritis is acting up, but that's age for you. What's new with you?" I felt the blood rush from my head. My hands went cold. I mumbled an excuse and hung up. She wasn't dying. She wasn't even sick. She was taking pottery classes. I paced my apartment for hours. How do you confront someone who faked their mother's death? It's not just betrayal. It's a violation of something sacred. You don't lie about that. Finally, I called him. He answered on the second ring, voice casual. "Yo, what's up?" I didn't waste time. I talked to your mom. Silence. I heard a faint background noise, maybe a TV or music. Then he said, "You what?" I called Judy. She's fine. She's literally making pots, Mason. So you want to tell me what the hell is going on? More silence. Then, softly, "You weren't supposed to do that." I nearly screamed. "You lied. About her dying. You used Cancer Man. What the actual hell?" He let out a breath. I didn't know what else to do. And then the real story began to unfold. He was in deep, not just regular debt. We're talking shady, dangerous kind of debt. Gambling, private lenders, names he wouldn't even say over the phone. It started as poker nights, turned into online betting, then crypto, then sketchier stuff. When he lost control, he started borrowing. First from his job, then from friends, then from people who don't care about your excuses. They just want their money back, interest or blood. And you thought the best solution was to kill your mom off? I spat. I panicked. I knew you wouldn't just hand me money unless it was serious. And it was serious. I thought I was going to die. I was shaking, furious. But there was a part of me that also felt this strange, nauseating pity. Because the Mason I knew, he was smart. He was kind. But this wasn't him anymore. I hung up, didn't wait for him to finish. I blocked him on everything. Then I sat down and cried like a kid. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. What I found out next made the lie about his mom look like nothing. I didn't sleep that night. Not really, just lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how a friend I trusted like a brother could look me in the eye, figuratively, through the phone, and fake the slow death of his own mother for a few $1,000. But what kept gnawing at me more than the betrayal itself was something he'd said right before I hung up, something that didn't register fully until hours later. I thought I was going to die, and the way he said it didn't sound like metaphor or panic. It sounded like something else, like fear, like something real, and that scared me more than I wanted to admit. So the next day, even though I had told myself I was done, I did what people do when they can't let go. I searched, started digging, not because I forgave him, not because I owed him anything, but because I had this horrible feeling in my chest like the story wasn't finished yet, like I was standing on the edge of something much bigger than a lie about cancer. I found out Mason hadn't just been gambling, he had been running games, hosting illegal poker nights in some back room of a laundromat in Jersey, and then later working as a runner for a guy named Lyle, who, according to a Reddit thread that disappeared 12 hours after I saw it, was the kind of person whose debts never got forgiven, only collected in other currencies: your car, your house, your face, maybe your family. And apparently Mason got in too deep. Not just with money, but with someone's girlfriend, someone named Corey, and that name kept popping up in forums and sketchy Facebook groups with posts like "Corey's looking for someone" and "If Corey's asking about you, move." And that's when I realized Mason wasn't faking fear, he was hiding from something that might actually kill him. Still, that didn't excuse what he did, what he said, but it made things murkier, harder to keep things black and white, because maybe when people are drowning, they'll grab anything, even if it means dragging someone else down with them. A week later, I got a letter. Not a text, not an email, a letter in slanted handwriting on cheap hotel stationery with no return address. It said, "You hate me, and I don't blame you. I deserve that. I lied about my mom. I lied to you. But I didn't do it because I wanted your money. I did it because I knew you were the only one who'd believe me if I told you something was wrong. Because if I'd told you the truth, you would have told me to go to the cops. But I couldn't do that. I still can't. Because it's not just my life on the line anymore." That last sentence made me freeze. Who else was involved? I turned the paper over, nothing else. No name, no number. But the next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I let it go to voicemail, but then I checked it and my blood ran cold. It was Judy, not Mason, his mother, the woman who was supposedly dying. Her voice was shaking. "I don't know who else to call," she said, "but I think Mason's in trouble. Real trouble. There's a man sitting in a car across the street from my house. He's been there for 3 days." Suddenly, everything clicked. The lie wasn't about escaping debt. It was about protecting her. He lied about her dying not to get money, but to make her disappear from the radar, make it look like she was gone, so no one would come after her. And I, like an idiot, had called her. I had blown her cover. They thought she was dead. Until I opened my mouth. I sat down hard, heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't about 3 grand anymore. This was about survival. And I had just made everything worse. I didn't even put on shoes, just grabbed my keys and drove, mind racing, chest tight, every red light feeling like a countdown to disaster because somehow I had turned from a friend trying to help into the guy who might have gotten someone's mom hurt or worse. And all I could hear in my head was her voice on that voicemail, trembling but calm, too calm, like someone who's already decided what they'll do if it all goes sideways. And I hated myself for putting her in that position. I got to her house in under an hour, and sure enough, there was a black sedan parked across the street, windows tinted, engine off, but I could see the shape of a man in the driver's seat, motionless, like a statue carved from darkness, and I parked 2 blocks away, walked the rest of the way, heart thudding so loud, I thought the guy in the car would hear it. And when I got to Judy's front door, she opened it before I could knock like she'd been standing behind it, waiting, listening. She pulled me inside without a word, locked the door, then turned and said, "I made a mistake telling you." I couldn't speak, just stared at her because she looked older than I remembered. Not sick, just tired in a way that went beyond sleep or age, like someone who'd been holding her breath for months and was finally exhaling. And then she sat me down, poured tea with hands that trembled only slightly, and began to talk. She told me Mason hadn't come up with a lie on his own. He'd come her first, weeks before he ever called me, told her everything, begged her to leave town, to go dark, and she had refused at first, said it was all too insane, too Hollywood, until he showed her a picture, just one photo. That changed everything, and she didn't tell me what was in that photo, just that it was of her, taken from outside her gym, then another from inside her kitchen window, and that's when she packed a bag and went off the grid, stayed with a cousin in Arizona, but eventually came back thinking it had all blown over until I called her, and now the car had shown up, and she didn't know if it was connected, but it felt like more than coincidence, and I didn't disagree. I asked where Mason was now, and she just shook her head. "Hiding," she said, "but not well. He's never been good at that." I tried to piece things together, understand what the hell had gone so wrong, and that's when I remembered something Mason had said when we were 19, drunk on cheap vodka after finals, sitting on the roof of her dorm. If I ever disappear, he'd said, "Check the tattoo." Back then I'd laughed, called him dramatic, but he pulled up his sleeve and showed me this tiny ink design on his bicep, a rook chess piece inside a broken circle, and said it meant something. To someone, but wouldn't tell me more, just grinned like he was holding a secret I'd never be ready for. And now, 10 years later, I remembered that rook. I left Judy's place that night with a promise I wasn't sure I could keep, that she'd be safe, that I'd fix it. And with that memory lodged in my brain like a splinter, and I went home and started digging again. Not online this time. Old yearbooks, photos, messages. And I found it in a picture from junior year, a blurry shot of Mason at a chess club meet. And in the background, a poster for an underground game club that I barely remembered, the Broken Circle League. And that was the first time I realized this went back way further than Miami, further than poker nights and online bets. This was something older, something I had never known I was close to. I sent a message to a guy who used to be part of that group. Let's call him Eli. And he replied 2 hours later with a single line, "If Mason's in it again, it's already too late." I called him immediately. He didn't answer. But 30 minutes later, I got another message, an address. No explanation. I drove there the next morning. It was an abandoned house on the edge of the city, boarded windows, no cars, no signs of life. But the door was open. Inside was nothing that, in oh furniture, in oh mason. Just a note on the floor point, 3 words. I'm so sorry. I stared at that note like it might burst into flames or scream or bleed because 3 words had never felt so loud, so final, so much like a goodbye, and not the kind people right before hopping on a flight or moving cities. This was the kind of sorry you leave behind when there's nothing else left, when you've run out of plans and people and options and breath. And I felt this panic rise in my throat because I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not even hurt. I was scared, truly scared, not for myself, but for someone I used to know like my own reflection who was now a shadow, barely clinging to existence. I walked through the house calling his name, hearing nothing but the creak of rotting wood under my feet and the high-pitched whine of silence, a silence that felt unnatural, like the house itself was holding its breath. And I wanted to leave, I wanted to run, but I couldn't, not until I knew. Not until I was sure he wasn't in some back room bleeding or tied up or dead. There was a staircase, half collapsed, but I took it anyway, each step a prayer not to fall through, and at the top, the hallway stretched out like a spine with ribs of cracked doors, and the last one on the left was open just a little. I pushed it gently, and there he was, alive, barely. He was sitting against the far wall, knees up, face buried in his arms. And for a second, I thought he might be unconscious, but then I saw his shoulders moving. He was breathing, shaking, murmuring something too low to hear. And when he looked up at me, I saw a face I didn't recognize, gaunt pale, eyes sunken like he'd lost 20 pounds in 10 years and any trace of the kid I met that first day of college. I didn't say anything. I just sat down across from him, the way we used to after class when life was simple and ramen was the biggest crisis of the week. Finally, he spoke. You shouldn't have come. I asked him what he meant by the note that he didn't answer directly, that he said, You remember Eli? I nodded. He's gone. They found him. I felt something cold ripple through me. Found him where? He just shook his head. They don't leave notes for people like Eli. I didn't ask who they were because I was starting to understand this wasn't just about money or even the gambling. This was about secrets, about circles of power and silence, and deals made in smoke and blood. And Mason had touched something too deep, something ancient and real and off the books. He told me about the first night he played in one of their real games. Not the poker stuff, but the ones you needed an invite for, the ones that didn't have buy-ins but entries where you didn't gamble chips, but information favors people sometimes, and I could barely follow half of what he was saying because his voice kept breaking and his eyes darted toward the door, like he was expecting someone any second. I asked him what he gave them. He didn't answer. I asked again, and he said something I'll never forget. I didn't give them anything. I offered someone. You. The world stopped. He didn't look at me. He just kept talking, fast now, words tumbling over themselves like they wanted to be rid of him. I didn't mean to. It was leverage, just a name, just a bluff. I thought it'd scare them off, make them think I had value. I never thought they'd actually come for you. I didn't know they were watching. My heart was in my throat. So that's why Miami, the lie, your mom, it wasn't about escaping. It was about hiding me. He nodded, eyes wet. They asked who I trusted most. I told them. Then I regretted it. Tried to pull you out before they noticed. That's why I lied. To make you step back. To keep you out. But I messed it up. I always mess it up. I didn't know what to feel. Shock, betrayal, pity, rage. Because he hadn't just lied. He had sacrificed me. Even if he'd regretted it. Even if he tried to undo it. He still said my name in a room full of people who dealt in darkness and treated friends like currency. I got up. He didn't try to stop me. Where are you going? He asked, voice small. To do what you should have done, I said. To end this. I didn't have a plan when I left that house. No strategy or backup or clever speech. Just rage humming under my skin and this unbearable pressure in my chest that felt like grief and betrayal and fear all twisted into one. Because even after everything, even after the lie, the debt, the fact that Mason sold me out to whatever faceless monsters he was entangled with, I still loved him like a brother. And that love hurt more than the betrayal ever could. And I knew that if I didn't do something now, if I didn't face this thing head on, then it would haunt me forever, or worse, follow me until it didn't have to haunt me anymore. So I did something stupid. I want to find them. I want to find Corey. I started with the only clue I had, the name, the reputation, the whispers online, and I dropped it like a stone in the still waters of the deep web, posted in forums under throwaway usernames, asking questions you're not supposed to ask, and within 12 hours I got a message. You looking for him? Or looking to make it right? I typed back. I'm trying to fix a mistake. The reply came fast. Be at the old train depot tomorrow. Midnight. Come alone. No phones. Every horror movie I'd ever seen screamed at me to ignore it, to run, to disappear, but I couldn't because if I walked away now, they'd always be watching. Me, Mason, his mom, maybe even my family. And I refused to live like that. So I went. The depot was dead quiet, the kind of place that smells like rust and dust and forgotten things. And I walked in through a hole in the fence, heart pounding so loud I thought it might echo off the steel walls. And then I saw him, Corey. He wasn't what I expected. No muscles, no tatuatus, no teatrix. He looked normal, businesslike. Clean suit, clean shoes, clean voice. You're Mason's friend, he said, more a statement than a question. I nodded. He looked me up and down. You're not what I expected either. Usually they don't come. Usually they run. I'm not running, I said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. No, you're offering. I hesitated. What does that mean? You came here thinking you could end this, he said, walking slowly around me like a wolf sizing up prey. But this isn't a problem you end. It's a balance you pay. Mason upset the balance. You were part of the cost. Then take me, I said. And I meant it. Because if giving myself up meant the rest of them, Judy, my family, even Mason, would be left alone, then maybe that was the only redemption I had left. But Corey just laughed. Bold. Stupid, but bold. We already had your name. What we didn't have was your choice. He handed me an envelope. Inside were photos. All of me. Work, home, family. Maps. Notes. Times. This was your file, he said. I couldn't breathe. Why show me this? I asked. Because you walked into the fire, he said, and most people don't. Most people let others burn. And then he said something I'll never forget. The ones who walk in willingly, sometimes they earn a different kind of debt. He turned. Walk away. Don't contact him again. Not his mother. Not anyone connected to this. If you do, we'll know. I asked if it was over. He didn't answer. He just vanished into the dark. And that was it. No grand resolution. No edists. No justice. Just a heavy silence and a second chance I didn't fully understand. I didn't sleep for weeks. Mason vanished again. I kept the photos, the envelope, the memory, and the guilt because I still think about how close I came to being erased, about how my best friend had offered me up like a name scribbled on a napkin, about how I still miss him even though I know I shouldn't. Because love and betrayal aren't opposites, they're twins. And now I live with both. So if you're ever tempted to loan someone money, ask yourself what you're really giving them: a few dollars, a lifeline, or the first thread in a web you can't untangle. And if a friend ever calls you crying in the night, saying their mom is dying, don't just listen to what they say. Listen for what they're not saying. Sometimes the truth is quieter. And so much worse